Most men's midlife crisis involves a Harley-Davidson or a 25-year-old secretary. Mine started with discovering my wife was screwing the soccer coach while spending our savings on waterproof mascara and lies. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I'm Ethan Calloway, 42 years old, and I've been rewiring the Riverside General Hospital for the past 18 years. I know every circuit, every junction box, every flickering fluorescent that drives the nurses crazy on the third floor. What I apparently don't know is my own wife. Lila owns a boutique called Lakeside Luxe attached to our house, a cramped space filled with overpriced scarves and the kind of jewelry that screams, "I'm having an affair but trying to look classy about it." She's 39, blonde highlights refreshed monthly, and has recently developed some interesting new habits, like going to the gym at 10 p.m. every Tuesday and Thursday. "It's the only time the machines are free," she explained, not looking up from her phone as she applied another coat of that waterproof mascara. "You know how crowded it gets during normal hours." Normal hours. Right, because 10 p.m. is when all the serious athletes show up to pump iron. "What gym stays open that late?" I asked, genuinely curious. "The new one by the lake, 24 hours. She grabbed her designer water bottle, another recent purchase, and headed for the door. "Don't wait up." I didn't. Instead, I sat in my garage workshop, organizing my electrical tools and wondering when my wife of 16 years had become a stranger who needed waterproof makeup for indoor cardio. The first real clue came from Marlene Patterson, our across-the-street neighbor who considers surveillance a hobby. Marlene's 47, divorced twice, and has perfected the art of knowing everyone's business while pretending to tend her garden. She texted me at 7:23 a.m. on a Wednesday. "Saw Lila this morning with a tall guy, brown hair, expensive jacket. They were walking toward the lake like they were on their honeymoon. Thought you should know." I stared at the message. Then I looked in the bathroom mirror at my own reflection, 5'9", graying temples, wearing a hospital maintenance uniform that had seen better decades. Definitely not tall, definitely not expensive jacket material. I texted back, "What did he look like?" "Younger than you, soccer coach type. They went into that rental cabin by the water." My coffee suddenly tasted like battery acid. That evening, I asked Marlene to keep an eye on things. She was thrilled. Finally, a legitimate reason to use those binoculars she'd been pretending were for bird watching. "I've been suspicious for weeks," she admitted, standing in her driveway with the enthusiasm of someone who'd just been handed the keys to Fort Knox. She's been acting different. New clothes, new perfume, checking her phone constantly. "You noticed the perfume?" "Honey, I notice everything. It's called Midnight Temptation, and it costs more per ounce than my car payment." The next Tuesday, Marlene struck gold. She recorded everything on her phone, Lila and a tall man with professionally styled brown hair entering the lakeside rental cabin at 9:47 p.m. They didn't come out for 2 hours. I watched the footage 3 times, studying the man's face. Joel Drayton, 33 years old, recently divorced soccer coach at the high school. I knew him from parent-teacher conferences back when our son Owen played JV soccer. Handsome in that artificial way that comes from spending too much time in front of mirrors and not enough time doing actual work. The kind of guy who probably used more hair products than my wife. That Thursday, I followed them myself. Parked behind a cluster of pine trees with a clear view of the cabin windows. Watched my wife of 16 years kiss another man with the kind of passion she hadn't shown me since the Clinton administration. I sat there for 20 minutes, engine off, hands gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles went white. Part of me wanted to storm in there and confront them. The smarter part, the electrician part, that thinks in terms of circuits and consequences, told me to gather evidence first. When I got home, Owen was in the kitchen making a sandwich. "Where's Mom?" he asked, without looking up. "Gym," I said automatically. "Again?" She's been going a lot lately. My 16-year-old son had noticed what I'd been trying to ignore for months. Owen's always been observant, quiet kid, good grades, inherited his mother's looks and hopefully my work ethic. Yeah, she's really committed to staying in shape, I managed. Owen nodded, but I caught him giving me a look that suggested he wasn't buying it either. The next morning, I started going through our financial records. Credit card statements, bank withdrawals, receipts stuffed in Lila's purse when she thought I wasn't paying attention. What I found made my pressure spike. $600 charged to boutique supplies at a company I'd never heard of. When I looked up the business online, it turned out to be a luxury hotel chain. The charge was dated the same day Marlene had seen them at the cabin. I sat in my garage, staring at the receipt, feeling something cold and methodical settle in my chest, the same feeling I get when I'm troubleshooting a complex electrical problem, systematic, patient, thorough. Apparently, polyester blend sheets cost extra. I've always been good at fixing things, broken circuits, faulty wiring, electrical problems that make other people throw up their hands and call for help. What I learned over the next 2 weeks is that gathering evidence of your wife's affair requires the same methodical approach as rewiring a house, one cable at a time, everything documented, every connection verified. Ed Haskins, my boss at the hospital, noticed I was staying late more often. "You okay, Ethan? You've been working like a man trying to avoid going home." Ed's 54, semi-retired, and has been my mentor since I started at Riverside General. He's also been divorced twice, so he recognizes the signs. "Just catching up on some projects," I told him, but Ed's not stupid. "If you need to talk, you know where to find me. And if you need legal advice, my sister Yvette works in HR. She's been through her share of messy situations." I took him up on that offer. Yvette turned out to be a sharp woman in her late 30s who'd seen enough workplace drama to fill a library. "Document everything," she advised during our coffee break conversation. "Photos, receipts, bank records, witness statements. If this goes to divorce court, you want to be the one with the evidence, not the one scrambling to explain why half your assets disappeared." So I documented. Marlene became my unofficial surveillance partner, armed with her phone camera and an enthusiasm that bordered on professional. We tracked Lila's movements, noted the times she left for her gym sessions, recorded Joel's car parked at various locations around town. The pattern was consistent. Tuesday and Thursday nights at the cabin, Friday afternoons at a coffee shop across town where they thought nobody would recognize them. Sunday mornings when she claimed to be doing inventory at the boutique. Joel Drayton, it turned out, was a creature of habit. He lived in a rented house near the school, drove a blue Honda Civic that he kept obsessively clean, and had a routine as predictable as a digital clock, which made it easy to plan my first move. I waited until a Thursday evening when I knew he'd be at the cabin with my wife. Then I paid a visit to his house with a small care package, 3 hospital-grade stink bombs that I'd modified for maximum impact and minimum damage. The beauty of being an electrician is that you understand systems. Cars are just electrical systems on wheels. It took me 15 minutes to disable his starter and plant the stink bombs in his air conditioning vents, set to activate when he turned on the ignition. I was back home by the time Lila returned from her workout, glowing with post-exercise satisfaction that had nothing to do with cardio equipment. "How was the gym?" I asked, not looking up from my newspaper. "Great. Really worked up a sweat tonight." "I'll bet you did." The next morning, Joel's humiliation was the talk of the school. His car had filled with a smell so potent that the janitor refused to clean it, and it wouldn't start no matter how many times he turned the key. He ended up calling a tow truck and riding to work with the principal, trying to explain why he smelled like a combination of rotten eggs and industrial solvent. But that was just the warm-up act. I'd been friends with Tom Bradley, the head of school maintenance, for over a decade. Tom owed me favors. I'd helped him rewire the gymnasium lighting system on my own time, saved the school district thousands of dollars. I need you to look into something, I told him over lunch at our usual diner. Confidentially. What kind of something? The kind that involves a coach who might be crossing professional boundaries. Tom's expression darkened. He'd been at the school for 25 years and took his responsibility to the students seriously. You have evidence? I showed him photos of Joel and Lila together, along with time-stamped records of when Joel was supposed to be at school, but was actually elsewhere. This isn't about students, Tom said, studying the images. No, but it shows a pattern of dishonesty, and if he's lying about this, what else might he be lying about? Tom made some calls. By the end of the week, Joel was suspended pending a full investigation into his conduct and whereabouts during school hours. The official reason was irregularities in scheduling and attendance. The unofficial reason was that the school board didn't like coaches who couldn't be trusted to be where they claimed to be. Meanwhile, I started making life difficult for Lila in small, untraceable ways. Our joint checking account, which I'd largely ignored for years, suddenly came under my careful management. I moved most of our money into a separate account that required both signatures for withdrawals. Her credit cards, the ones I'd been paying off without question, were suddenly maxed out due to mysterious charges that I claimed to be investigating for fraud. The bank says someone's been using our cards for unusual purchases, I told her with a straight face. Hotels, restaurants, expensive gifts, they've frozen the accounts until we can sort it out. Lila's face went pale. How long will that take? Could be weeks, maybe months. You know how thorough these fraud investigations are? The beauty of this approach was that it was all technically legal. The money was ours, the accounts were in both our names, and I had every right to protect our assets from what appeared to be fraudulent activity. Lila's boutique started feeling the pinch immediately. She couldn't restock inventory, couldn't pay her suppliers, couldn't maintain the lifestyle she'd been building with Joel. But the real masterstroke came when I decided to let the town in on the secret. Our community has a Facebook group called Lakeside Living, where neighbors share everything from lost pet alerts to restaurant recommendations. It's also the fastest way to spread information, or gossip, to 1,500 households. I crafted my post carefully. Has anyone else noticed unusual activity around the rental cabins by the lake? Seems like there's been a lot of late-night traffic lately. Just wondering if we should be concerned about security in the area. Within hours, the comments started pouring in. Neighbors reporting strange cars, unusual visitors, suspicious behavior. Marlene, bless her heart, added her own observations about married people who should know better. The post went viral, at least by small-town standards. Everyone was talking about it, speculating, adding their own theories and observations. Lila saw it, of course. She confronted me that evening, her voice shaking with barely controlled panic. Did you write that Facebook post? Which post? I asked innocently. About the lake cabins. People are talking, Ethan. They're saying terrible things. What kind of terrible things? She started crying then. Big, dramatic tears that might have moved me 6 months earlier. Now they just looked like another performance. You know what they're saying? About affairs and cheating and people who can't be trusted? I looked at her for a long moment. This woman I'd married 16 years ago, who'd shared my bed and raised my son, and was now falling apart because her secret was becoming public knowledge. Well, I said finally, maybe people shouldn't give them anything to talk about. The thing about small towns is that once gossip starts flowing, it's like water through a broken dam, impossible to stop, and it finds every crack in every foundation. By the following week, Lila's world was crumbling in ways she hadn't anticipated. Her friend Patty, who worked part-time at the boutique, started asking uncomfortable questions about the business finances. Janice Hawthorne, the town council member who'd been Lila's biggest supporter and social patron, suddenly became unavailable for their usual coffee meetings. I was in my element. This was problem-solving at its finest. Identify the weak points in the system, apply pressure systematically, and watch the whole structure collapse. Detective Sanders showed up at my door on a Tuesday morning. He's 49, no nonsense, and has been dealing with small-town drama long enough to recognize the difference between criminal activity and marital warfare. "Morning, Ethan. Got a few minutes to talk?" "Sure. Coffee?" We sat at my kitchen table while I poured 2 cups and waited for him to get to the point. "Been hearing some interesting stories around town lately," Sanders said. "Something about your wife and Joel Drayton?" "Yeah? What kind of stories?" "The kind that usually end with someone doing something stupid. I'm hoping that someone isn't going to be you." I appreciated his directness. Sanders and I had known each other for years. Our sons had played Little League together, and I'd done some electrical work on his house. "I'm not planning to do anything illegal, if that's what you're asking." "Good, because Joel's been complaining about harassment. Says someone's been messing with his car, spreading rumors, making his life difficult. Sounds like he's having a rough time." Sanders studied my face. "Ethan, I've been doing this job for 22 years. I know the difference between coincidence and revenge. Just make sure you stay on the right side of the law." "Always do." After he left, I realized I needed to be more careful, but I wasn't about to stop. That afternoon, I got a call from Owen's school. He'd been in a fight with another student, something about kids making jokes about his mother. My 16-year-old son was defending a woman who was destroying our family, and he didn't even know it. I picked him up from the principal's office, and we drove home in silence. Finally, Owen spoke up. "Dad, what's going on with Mom?" I could have lied, should have lied. Instead, I pulled over and told him the truth, or at least a version of it. "Your mother's been seeing someone else, Owen. I'm trying to figure out how to handle it." He stared out the windshield for a long time. When he finally looked at me, his expression was older than his 16 years. "Joel Drayton? How did you—" "I'm not stupid, Dad. I see things, hear things. Kids at school have been talking." We sat there for another few minutes, father and son, both of us processing the wreckage of our family. "What are you going to do?" Owen asked. "I'm going to make sure she doesn't get away with it." The next phase of my plan required more direct action. I'd been watching Joel's routine for weeks, and I knew he stopped at Murphy's gym every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday after school. Not the 24-hour place where he supposedly met my wife, the regular gym where he actually worked out. I waited in the parking lot until he went inside, then approached his Honda with a small bottle of skunk oil I'd acquired from a veterinary supply company. Just a few drops in the right places: door handles, steering wheel, gear shift. Nothing permanent, nothing damaging, but definitely memorable. The screaming started about 10 minutes after he came back to his car. By Thursday, the whole town knew about Joel's skunk encounter. The story grew with each telling. Some people said he'd been sprayed directly, others claimed he'd hit a skunk with his car. The truth didn't matter. What mattered was that Joel Drayton had become a laughingstock. But Lila's humiliation was just getting started. I'd discovered that her boutique finances were more creative than I'd realized. She'd been using business credit cards for personal expenses, claiming tax deductions for business meetings that were actually romantic dinners, and generally treating our joint assets like her personal shopping fund. Janice Hawthorne, as a town council member, took a dim view of local business owners who played fast and loose with their finances, especially when those business owners were suddenly unable to pay their municipal fees and taxes. I didn't have to report Lila directly. I just had to make sure Janice had access to the right information. "I'm worried about the boutique's financial situation," I told Janice during a chance encounter at the post office. "Lila's been acting strange about money lately, and I'm seeing charges I don't understand." Janice, who'd built her political career on being the town's financial watchdog, promised to look into it. Within days, Lila received a letter requesting a full audit of Lakeside Lux's business practices. The confrontation I'd been expecting finally came on a Friday evening. Lila burst into the house like a woman on fire, her face flushed with anger and desperation. "You bastard! You're destroying everything!" I looked up from my newspaper. "Everything like what?" "My business, my reputation. My friends won't even talk to me anymore." "Maybe you should have thought about that before you started screwing the soccer coach." The words hung in the air like smoke. It was the first time I'd said it directly, and the effect was immediate. Lila's anger collapsed into something that looked like relief. "You know, I've known for months. The question is, what are you going to do about it?" She tried a different approach then. The seduction routine that might have worked when we were younger, and I was more naive. "Ethan, we can fix this. I made a mistake, but we can work through it. We have a son, a life together. We had a life together. You decided to share yours with someone else. It didn't mean anything. It was just what? Just fun? Just excitement? Just something to do while I was working to pay for your boutique and your lifestyle and your waterproof mascara?" She started crying again, but these tears looked different, more desperate, less performative. "What do you want from me?" I folded my newspaper and looked at her, really looked at her. This woman who'd shared my bed for 16 years, who'd given birth to my son, who'd promised to love and honor me. "I want you to understand that actions have consequences," I said, "and I want you to experience some of those consequences. You're trying to destroy me." "No, Lila. You destroyed yourself. I'm just making sure everyone else knows about it." The divorce papers were filed on a Monday morning. Yvette from hospital HR had recommended a lawyer, a sharp woman named Patricia Mills, who specialized in cases involving financial infidelity and asset protection. "Your documentation is excellent," Mills told me during our first meeting. "Bank records, photographs, witness statements, business irregularities. Your wife's going to have a difficult time explaining any of this." The courthouse in our county is a small-town affair where everyone knows everyone else's business. Judge Bernice Lawton, who'd been presiding over divorce cases for 15 years, had a reputation for being fair but unsympathetic to cheating spouses. Lila showed up with a lawyer she could barely afford, a young guy fresh out of law school who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Joel wasn't there, which told me everything I needed to know about his commitment to their relationship. The hearing was scheduled for Thursday morning. By Wednesday evening, the whole town knew about it. That's when Joel made his first real mistake. He showed up at my house around 9 p.m., clearly drunk and looking for a fight. I was in the garage, organizing my tools and preparing for the next day's testimony, when I heard his car pull into my driveway. "Calloway, get out here!" I opened the garage door and found him standing beside his Honda, swaying slightly, his face flushed with alcohol and anger. "Joel, you look like hell." "You snake, you ruined my life." "I didn't ruin anything. I just exposed what was already there." He took a step toward me, his hands clenched into fists. "You think you're so smart, don't you? With your little games and your spying and your—" "My what? My evidence? My documentation of you screwing my wife?" "She was going to leave you anyway. She told me how miserable she was, how you ignored her, how I never appreciated her spending our money on hotel rooms so she could cheat on me." Joel lunged at me then, telegraphing his punch like a drunk amateur. I sidestepped easily and let him stumble past me into the garage, where he knocked over a tool cabinet and went down hard. "Stay down, Joel. You're embarrassing yourself." But he didn't stay down. He got up, red liquid trickling from a cut on his forehead, and came at me again. This time I didn't dodge. I caught his swing, twisted his arm behind his back, and marched him out to the driveway, where half the neighborhood could see us. "Here's your boyfriend, folks," I called out to the gathering crowd. "Joel Drayton, soccer coach and homewrecker, drunk and disorderly on my property." Marlene was recording everything on her phone. Mrs. Henderson from 2 houses down had called the police. The teenage kids from across the street were live streaming the whole thing on social media. Joel tried to break free, but 18 years of physical labor had kept me stronger than a gym-obsessed pretty boy who spent more time looking at himself in mirrors than actually working. Let me go. Gladly, as soon as you apologize to my son for destroying his family. I don't owe you anything. You owe me 16 years of marriage, about $30,000 in hotel bills and gifts, and an explanation for why you thought you could steal another man's wife without consequences. Detective Sanders arrived, just as Joel broke free and took another swing at me. This time I didn't restrain myself. I hit him once, hard, in the solar plexus. He went down gasping and stayed down. "Evening, Ethan," Sanders said, surveying the scene. "Having a party?" Joel was just leaving. "Weren't you, Joel?" Joel struggled to his feet, still gasping, his face a mixture of pain and humiliation. "He attacked me. I want to press charges." Sanders looked around at the crowd of witnesses, all of whom had seen Joel throw the first punch. "Looks to me like you came onto his property looking for trouble and found it. My advice is to go home, sober up, and stay away from the Calloway family." Joel limped back to his car, bleeding and defeated, while half the town watched and recorded. As he drove away, I realized that this was just the beginning. The courthouse hearing the next morning was a formality. Judge Lawton reviewed my evidence, the financial records, the photographs, the witness statements, the business irregularities, while Lila's lawyer tried unsuccessfully to mount a defense. "Mrs. Calloway," the judge said finally, "do you dispute any of this evidence?" Lila looked like she'd aged 10 years in the past month. Her boutique was closed, her friends had abandoned her, and her lover had proven himself to be a coward when things got difficult. "No, Your Honor." "Do you have any assets or income that would allow you to maintain separate residence while these proceedings continue?" "No, Your Honor." Judge Lawton's expression was stern, but not unsympathetic. "Mr. Calloway, are you requesting that your wife vacate the marital home?" "Yes, Your Honor. I'm also requesting full custody of our minor son and protection of all marital assets pending final resolution." "Granted. Mrs. Calloway, you have 72 hours to remove your personal belongings from the family home. All business assets are frozen pending a full financial audit." Lila's lawyer tried to object, but there wasn't much to object to. The evidence was overwhelming, the financial misconduct was documented, and his client had essentially admitted to everything. As we left the courthouse, I found myself surrounded by reporters from the local newspaper and radio station. Small-town drama like this was front-page news. "Mr. Calloway, how do you feel about the judge's decision?" "I feel like justice was served. My wife made choices that destroyed our family, and now she's experiencing the consequences of those choices." "What's next for you?" "Next, I'm going home to have dinner with my son and figure out how to rebuild the life that was taken from us." But I wasn't done with Joel Drayton, not by a long shot. The storm hit on Saturday night, one of those late autumn thunderstorms that turns the lake into a churning black mirror and sends most sensible people indoors to wait it out. I was in my garage workshop, installing a new security system that I'd designed myself, when I heard the sound of breaking glass from the back of the house. Joel had finally worked up the courage for a real confrontation. I'd been expecting this: the courthouse humiliation, the public beating, the complete destruction of his relationship with Lila. It was only a matter of time before he snapped completely and did something stupid. What I hadn't expected was how thoroughly stupid he'd be about it. He'd broken in through the kitchen window, probably thinking he could catch me by surprise. What he didn't know was that my new security system included motion sensors, cameras, and a few modifications that I'd borrowed from my years of hospital maintenance work. The first thing he triggered was the lights. Every bulb in the house blazed to life simultaneously, turning the interior into something that looked like a movie set. The second thing was the alarm. Not a gentle beeping, but a full-throated howl that could be heard 3 blocks away. The third thing was my personal favorite: a modified electric fence system that I'd installed around the interior doorways. Not enough voltage to cause real harm, but definitely enough to get someone's attention. Joel's scream when he hit the kitchen doorway was audible even over the alarm. I found him on the floor, twitching slightly, his hair standing up in a way that would have been comical under different circumstances. "Hello, Joel. Fancy meeting you here." He tried to get up, but the shock had left him disoriented. You electrocuted me." "Just a little jolt. Think of it as a home security feature." The storm was getting worse outside, rain hammering against the windows, lightning illuminating the lake in brief, dramatic flashes. Perfect atmosphere for what was about to happen. I helped Joel to his feet, not out of kindness, but because I wanted him conscious for what came next. "You broke into my house, Joel. That's a felony. I just wanted to talk." "Through a broken window? At midnight? During a thunderstorm?" He was soaked from the rain, bleeding from cuts on his hands and arms, and still slightly stunned from his encounter with my security system. He looked pathetic. "She loved me," he said, as if that explained everything. "No, she didn't. She used you, just like she used me. The difference is, I worked for 16 years to build something with her. You were just entertainment." "That's not true." "Really? Then where is she now? When you were getting arrested, getting fired, getting humiliated in front of the whole town. Where was your great love then?" Joel's face crumpled. For the first time since this whole mess started, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. "She said we were going to be together. She said a lot of things, Joel. She's good at that. But when it came time to choose between her comfortable life and her exciting affair, what did she choose?" The sound of sirens was getting closer. Someone, probably Marlene, had called the police when the alarm went off. "Here's what's going to happen," I told Joel. "You're going to walk out that front door in front of all the neighbors who are undoubtedly watching this whole thing, and you're going to confess to everyone exactly what you did. The affair, the lies, the destruction of a 16-year marriage and a family." "I won't do that." "Yes, you will. Because if you don't, I'm going to press charges for breaking and entering, and you're going to spend the next few years in prison thinking about how you destroyed your life for a woman who abandoned you the moment things got difficult." The front door burst open, and Detective Sanders entered with 2 uniformed officers, all of them soaked from the storm. "Ethan, you okay?" "I'm fine. Joel here was just leaving." Sanders looked at Joel, disheveled, bleeding, still slightly singed from his encounter with my security system, and shook his head. "Joel Drayton, you're under arrest for breaking and entering." "Wait," I said. "Before you take him, I think he has something he wants to say to the neighbors." By now, half the street was gathered outside despite the rain. Marlene with her phone camera, the Henderson family from next door, teenagers with their own recording devices, even old Mr. Patterson from the corner house, who rarely left his property for anything. Sanders looked at me suspiciously. What kind of something? The truth, about what he's been doing for the past 6 months. Joel looked around at the crowd, at the cameras, at the police officers waiting to arrest him. His shoulders sagged in defeat. I had an affair with Lila Calloway. We used her business credit cards for hotels and restaurants. We lied about where we were going and what we were doing. I helped her steal money from their joint accounts. The crowd was silent except for the sound of rain and the occasional rumble of thunder. We planned to claim that Ethan and Owen had gone missing, for the insurance money, so we could start over somewhere else. That was news to me. I'd suspected financial irregularities, but insurance fraud was a whole different level of betrayal. Sanders stepped forward. "Joel Drayton, you're also under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud." As they led Joel away in handcuffs, Lila's car pulled into the driveway. She got out slowly, taking in the scene, the broken window, the police cars, the crowd of neighbors, her former lover being arrested in front of half the town. She walked up to me, her face streaked with rain and tears. "Ethan, No," I said. "You don't get to explain. You don't get to apologize. You don't get to ask for forgiveness. I never meant for it to go this far. You meant every bit of it. The only thing you didn't mean was getting caught." The crowd was still watching, still recording. This would be all over social media within hours, shared and reshared until everyone in 3 counties knew the whole sordid story. "You destroyed our family for what, Lila? For a coward who broke into our house and confessed to planning insurance fraud? For a man who abandoned you the moment his own life got difficult?" She had no answer for that. "You want to know what the real tragedy is? I would have forgiven the affair. If you'd come to me, if you'd been honest, if you'd shown even a shred of remorse for what you were doing to Owen and me, I might have forgiven it." "Would you really?" I looked at her for a long moment. This woman who'd shared my life for 16 years, who'd given birth to my son, who'd thrown it all away for excitement and waterproof mascara. "We'll never know now, will we?" Sanders approached us as his officers finished securing the scene. "Ethan, we're going to need a full statement about the insurance fraud allegation." "Of course. But first, I think Lila has something she wants to say to our neighbors. Don't you, Lila?" She looked around at the crowd, at the cameras, at the wreckage of her life spread out for everyone to see. "I had an affair with Joel Drayton. I used our family's money to pay for hotels and gifts and a lifestyle that I didn't earn. I betrayed my husband and my son for a man who turned out to be a coward and a criminal." Her voice broke on the last words, but she continued. "I destroyed the best thing in my life because I was selfish and stupid and thought I deserved something I hadn't worked for. Ethan Calloway is a good man, a faithful husband, and a devoted father. I threw that away for nothing." The crowd began to disperse as the storm intensified, but I could see phones still recording, capturing every word for posterity. As the police cars pulled away with Joel in custody, as the neighbors returned to their homes with enough gossip to last for months, as Lila gathered her remaining belongings from our house for the final time, I stood in my driveway and felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Peace. Not happiness. That would come later, maybe. Not satisfaction. Revenge is never as satisfying as you think it will be. But peace. The calm that comes after a storm has passed, and the damage has been assessed, and the rebuilding can begin. Owen came out of the house, where he'd been watching everything from his bedroom window. "Dad? Is it over?" I put my arm around my son's shoulders and looked up at the lightning illuminating the dark sky over the lake. "Yeah, son, it's over." The next morning, the local newspaper's headline read, "Local soccer coach arrested for fraud and breaking and entering." The story detailed Joel's confession, Lila's public admission, and the insurance fraud plot that had shocked even the most gossip-hardened residents of our small town. By noon, Joel had been fired from his coaching position and charged with multiple felonies. Lila's boutique was permanently closed, its assets seized as part of the fraud investigation. The rental cabin where they'd conducted their affair was suddenly available for legitimate guests. I went back to work at the hospital, where my colleagues treated me with a mixture of sympathy and respect. Ed Haskins clapped me on the shoulder and said, "You handled that like a professional, Ethan. Methodical, thorough, and effective." Yvette from HR stopped by to check on me. "How are you holding up?" "Better than I expected. It turns out that living with the truth, even when it's ugly, is easier than living with lies." Owen started seeing a counselor to help him process everything that had happened. He was angry with his mother, disappointed in Joel, and proud of how I'd handled the situation. "You didn't just get mad," he told me one evening as we worked together in the garage. "You got even, but you did it the right way." "What's the right way?" "You made sure everyone knew the truth. You didn't hurt anybody physically, you didn't break any laws, you just made sure they couldn't hide anymore." 3 months later, Joel pleaded guilty to breaking and entering, conspiracy to commit fraud, and theft. He was sentenced to 2 years in prison and ordered to pay restitution for the money he and Lila had stolen. Lila moved to another state where she got a job working retail and tried to rebuild her life away from the gossip and judgment of our small town. She sends Owen birthday cards and Christmas presents, but she's never asked to see him, and he's never asked to see her. The divorce was finalized without fanfare. I kept the house, Owen, and most of our assets. Lila kept her guilt and the knowledge that she'd destroyed everything good in her life for a man who turned out to be a coward. 6 months after that stormy night when Joel broke into our house, I was elected to the town council. Apparently, the voters appreciated someone who could handle a crisis with methodical precision and unwavering integrity. At my first council meeting, Janice Hawthorne, who'd distanced herself from Lila once the financial irregularities came to light, welcomed me to the position. "We need people who understand that actions have consequences," she said. I thought about that phrase as I drove home that evening, past the lake where Lila and Joel had conducted their affair, past the rental cabin that had been the scene of so much deception, past Marlene's house where my neighbor was undoubtedly watching for the next bit of drama to unfold. Actions have consequences. It's a simple concept, as basic as Ohm's law or the principles of electrical current. Apply pressure to a system and the system will respond. The response might be immediate or delayed, dramatic or subtle, but it will come. I'd spent months applying systematic pressure to the lies and deceptions that had infected my life. The system had responded exactly as I'd predicted, completely, thoroughly, and permanently. As I pulled into my driveway, Owen came out to help me carry groceries into the house. He was 17 now, taller, more mature, shaped by the events that had destroyed his family and taught him hard lessons about trust and betrayal and the importance of integrity. "How was the meeting, Dad?" "Productive. We're going to upgrade the streetlights around the lake. Better visibility, more security." "Good idea. You never know what people might be doing in the dark." I smiled at that. My son had learned more about human nature in the past year than most people learn in a lifetime. That night, as I sat in my garage workshop organizing my tools and planning the next day's projects, I thought about the chain of events that had started with waterproof mascara and ended with Joel Drayton in prison and Lila Calloway in exile. I'd won. Not just the divorce, not just the custody battle, not just the financial settlement. I'd won something more important, the knowledge that when my world fell apart, I'd had the strength and intelligence to rebuild it on my own terms. The house was quiet. Owen was doing homework upstairs, and for the first time in over a year, I felt like I was exactly where I belonged. Justice, it turns out, is a lot like electrical work. It requires patience, precision, and the understanding that every action creates an equal and opposite reaction. Push the right buttons, connect the right wires, and even the most complex problems can be solved. I turned off the garage lights and headed inside, leaving the storms and the darkness behind me.